Connect. Connect. It's been down all day. Oh, hello. Didn't hear you come in there. Well, since the Project Diablo 2 servers are down, figure might as well shoot a video, show you what I've been up to. Check this guy out. It's a real beauty. Sega indeed. Now this is a Game Gear. This is not an OEM build. This is a brand new shell from RetroSix. They made custom shells along with a brand new screen. Now you might think this is a McWill kit, but it is not. This is a new screen kit made by RetroKai. And essentially it's a McWill clone that's been optimized greatly to make the install as easy as possible, remove way less components, and overall it's just a faster job to do. Now the only real drawback there is you will lose the ability to have a VGA or an HDMI port. There's no outputs, RGB outputs for something like that, but if that's not something you're interested in, highly recommend it. It's one, easier to install, and two, it's cheaper. But there is some drawbacks with it. Mainly coming with the PCB, the easy install PCB sucks ass, but we'll get more into that. So this is the end result right here. I think it's beautiful. And I did I replaced the rechargeable batteries in this with something very fresh, very new, brand new Amazon rechargeable batteries. Very simple mod. And if you guys want to see that tutorial on how I did that, let me know in the comments and I'll make it. Very nice to bring one of these back to life. If you have one from back in the day, it's probably not holding a charge very well because those are 30-year-old batteries. No bueno. So let's go in to the install process. I'll show you how it's done. Alright guys, so I've been gathering pieces for this mod for about a month. I'm very excited that everything is here and I can finally pull this off. So first off, we've got a crappy junk Game Gear here. It's a Japanese model, but I had swapped in. It's got a US power plug, so we can use a US rechargeable battery pack. The Power Back OEM one. Get some new batteries in that. It's going to be gravy. Next up, we got one of these brand new, dial down the exposure there. We've got a brand new yellow shell here from RetroSix, who just did a line of Game Gear brand new shells. They make very solid shells, and very happy they are giving the Game Gear some love. There's a lot of cool new Game Gear things coming out. So new shell, I got the closest I can find, as I want to build this like the OEM yellow rare Japanese model. I really, really like it. So I've got some green buttons, probably a little, it's not the perfect color, but close enough for my taste. Got a new glass lens here. Cap kit from Console 5. In case you're unaware, essentially every Game Gear needs to have its capacitors swapped. The caps on it go bad, much like the Turbo Express and other NEC consoles. Caps are terrible in this thing by default, and about 95% of the time, if you get a Game Gear for parts, if it hasn't been messed with already, the issue is the caps because they haven't been replaced yet. So yeah, we're going to start with that. And last and definitely not least, we've got this brand new Magic screen for the Game Gear. Now this was made by RetroKai, I believe is the company name. And I happened to just see a post on my feed in the Game Gear subreddit, scrolling around, being a goober. that a new screen was made. Now, apparently this screen is a significantly easier install than the McWill, which I have done quite a few of those, and yes, the McWill is, I would say it's more on the advanced side. It's more like a Modbo, a PS2 install, as it's super tedious. You have to remove a ton of components. You're going to need a desoldering gun or something to help you along. It's just a really unpleasant mod to do, so luckily we've got this new one. I haven't looked at the diagrams yet, but from what I've gathered, significantly easier to install. So I'm looking forward to that, and we're gonna pop this in, and hopefully this will be a good install guide for all of y'all. We shall see. And yeah, is that everything? Oh, and obviously we've got the kit here. Looks like we've got some mounting brackets. That's nice. Very nice. What else we got in this package? We've got some 30 AWG hookup wire. Oh, beautiful. It's not often that I get to do a mod install with paper like this. Most of the time I pull up the diagram on my second monitor, but this is gonna feel like a caveman today, as we're gonna be looking at paper. It's fucking nuts. Okay, so yeah, first things first, I'm gonna tear down this Game Gear and bring it back to life. Okay, first things first, remove Sonic 2. I'm gonna start with the game bit here. We've got one game bit security screw, so you're gonna need a specialty driver for that. Boom, easy, done with that. And now I'm just gonna find a Phillips head. That ought to do. I believe that's small enough or big enough. Yeah, that'll do. And make sure not to strip your screws, guys. If you're using your driver and you feel it slipping, switch to a Phillips head with a bigger head. Yeah, a lot of people who send me consoles to work on that they've attempted, they strip the screws, and really, if I knew the screws were stripped, I'd say no. I don't want to work on your shit, because dealing with stripped screws is not fun. Typically, you have to, if they're that bad, you have to drill them out, and I dislike doing that. I do not love drilling shit out, especially because it just could have been avoided so easily by using the right screwdriver. Uno más. Ugh. Okay. Should be all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. Okay, now let's take a look here. Yeah, this board doesn't look too bad, despite how gnarly it looks on the outside. For something that's a million years old, this looks quite nice. Quite nice indeed. Okay, I'm gonna unplug everything I got here. So here's what we're gonna do. We're going to swap out all of the capacitors. So we've got all of these guys here. They're very unique looking capacitors, so they might be, if you've done a cap swap on something, you might be surprised by how these look. These are not common. I've only seen them in the Game Gear. Basically, with these, to remove it, all you gotta go do is lift it up and give it a little wiggle. Comes right off. And then you're going to need to have tip cleaner. So you heat up the pads, you get these legs off, and then you clean the legs off your soldering iron tip. Now the one thing I really want to stress here, got a tighter shot. So those are the legs of the cap that I just pulled off here. These look like they're in pretty good shape, but typically you will see the legs looking a bit crusty, and that's the electrolytic juices spilling all over the board. And when you have one that's in very bad shape, it's going to take going over it with the iron quite a bit of times in order to get it to for the solder to flow. When you have those juices, solder's just not going to stick to it, so you're going to want to scrub it down regardless with rubbing alcohol. But for the most part, you're just not going to get all of it until you start burning it up. But that shit will stick to the tip of your iron. So when I do these, what I like to do is use my blade tip. I've got two blade tips. This is my good one that I don't use for this. And this is my cap swap blade tip, and I use this and only this tip when cleaning the pads for capacitor swaps like this, because you just don't want to wreck a nice tip that you use for everything. I would dedicate a specific tip for cleaning up these crappy boards that leak all over. Use it for Game Gears, use it for Turbo Expresses. That's what this tip is for me. The ones that have the consoles with capacitors that are for sure going to fail, for sure have failed. It can get pretty gross. So yeah, just use a dedicated tip is what I would recommend for something like this. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to remove every capacitor on the board, replace them, and I'll see you when I'm done with that. Okay, dudes, I cleaned up the board with some rubbing alcohol, removed that old solder from the pads and introduced some new solder there. Got some nice big beads, and since we're using electrolytic caps and not the aluminum ones, we can have a nice big pad like that. It doesn't need to be flush. I'd recommend it not being flush. So we're just gonna put the legs on, heat it up, or add some flux, heat it up, attach it, easy peasy. So yeah, that's how you do it for these guys, and I'll go ahead and do one with you guys just for a bit of tips, a little bit of method here, show you how I do it, and then I'll finish it up off cam, and then we'll move on to the audio and power boards. Okay, so for the cap swap, what I like to do is come on over to the Console 5 Game Gear Wiki. They have nice little capacitor maps for pretty much any console you can think of. And you're going to come in here and you're going to find your board revision. Mine is the single ASIC. Simplest way to figure it out is by checking over here in the side these caps here. See your orientation, make sure it lines up, and once you do, then you figured out which version of motherboard you're working on. So mine is the single ASIC, and we're gonna go ahead. I like to have both tabs open, so open this in a new tab, and we're gonna replace C43. That's gonna be easy to get a shot of on my end with the microscope. So C43, and we look at the single ASIC right here, C43, that's a 22 UF 6.3 volt capacitor. So let's get a shot of that on the old microscope. Okay. So let's see here. Let's clean up those pads. Much better. Nice to solder to. C43. Now we got to find a 22 UF. 22. It looks like there's only going to be one in this kit. 22 6.3 volts. Okay, got them. So here is C43. I found the 22 6.3 volts. Keep in mind there is another 22 UF capacitor with a higher voltage that goes for the power board, so just make sure you find the one with the lower voltage for this portion. The other 22 is for the power board. So the way these work, long leg here is positive, short leg is negative, and the short one, the negative side, has this strip on it. So that's how you know which side is negative. So you line it up with the board. You can see on the board here, a little plus. That pad is positive, so it would go in like so. So I'm going to snip the legs here. I always just eyeball it, but this is a good length for the legs, because on the Game Gears, what I like to do is put it in pretty much like the stock capacitors. So we solder it from the opposite end like this. Keep in mind the strip sides going to the negative, positive to positive. And there we go. You want to be super conscious of the polarity, because if you put one backwards, you could cause some serious damage there. It's not something you want to do. Bend it down like this. It's a little sweetheart. There we go. Now you just do that for every other one on the board. I want to go ahead, get that done. It's real tedious. Just stay sharp, pay attention to the positive negatives. Other than that, it's super easy to do. It's just a little tedious, so have fun, good luck, see you when that's done. Okay, so I've got all the capacitors swapped in to the main board, nice and bent, really clean, good job here. Really dig it. This board looks pretty awesome. So we're not gonna do any testing yet. We're gonna get the whole shebang done here. And next up, we got the power board and we got the audio board. Two completely different types of capacitors, two completely different removal styles. So let's start with the audio board. I'll show you how I go about removing these guys, and then these guys gonna need some something a little bit more special to get the through hole capacitors, but you should be able to get the job done with what you got. So yeah, we'll go move on to the audio board. I want to remove it. We'll take a look under the microscope. Okay, so here's the audio board under the scope. Nice close-up shot for you dudes. Yeah, and as you can see, those pads are looking pretty grimy, especially on this 47 right here. That one too. These are all bad, all very bad. The power board seems to have the least issue with the caps going bad, but we're replacing all these fuckers. So here's how I do it. Don't listen to the guides that tell you to twist them till they come off. That's probably the sketchiest way to do these. I take the flush cuts, and the best way to do it, next to using a hot air rework station, is come in with the flush cuts, come in horizontally, so parallel to the way the legs are going, like this. See, hopefully that makes sense. And we just we snip it off. No bending. Chop that up. We don't want to put pressure on these legs because they might already be super brittle from leaky fluids. And then once you start ripping pads, that's when you're gonna have to start jumping wires, and your job, your work just instantly became much sketchier, less nice, and you know, you're not saving any time by twisting it off. So this is how I do it. Just come on in, parallel again to the legs, snip snip, break that fucker up, and then remove that bottom half, and then you usually need to clip the legs, and you just break off this plastic piece or lift it right up, depends, and there we go. Yep, and as you can see, those are leaking pretty good. So just to get it done quick, we're going to clean that up. I want to flow off these legs real quick. This is still my crap tip. Alright. And you want these pads to be flush, so you can come on in with some solder wick, whatever you want to use. I use my Hack Odysee soldering gun, but you can use solder wick as well. And remove this old infested solder here. I want to use some rubbing alcohol, get the gross off. So yeah, clean up the pads, get all that old electrolytic fluid off, and replace the caps with the new ones. Got the 100s are the big guys, and the little guys, 47s. Pretty simple. Negative is the pad with the strip, and then make it nice on the board with the white strip. So just line up the black strip with the white strip. Other side's positive. You're good to go. Do it for all 5, and then you'll have nice, new, crisp audio coming out of your Game Gear. So I'm going to get that done, show you what it looks like. And just real quick, here's an example of a really crusty set of pads here. And this is really typical for these Game Gears. This has been a pretty uncommonly immaculate install so far for me, or cap swap. Typically you're looking at everything looks like this, and once you start heating it up with your iron, it smells like a stink ass pussy, kind of, or you know, some sort of Wuhan fish market. It's pretty rough. So maybe get a mask, hazmat suit, something like that. This shit is pretty gross to work on. Okay, so I'm gonna get a better example here. I switch back to my main not shitty tip, so I was having a hard time getting it to flow properly because of all the crap on the tip. That's how it goes. That's why we use a shitty tip, a dedicated shit tip for these kind of mods, or cap servicing, whatever you want to call it. Cap swaps get real gross on Game Gears and Turbo Express. It will destroy your tip. So I come on in here. I've got some solder on my tip already. This is really just about locking it in, and then we'll come to this side. Oh, didn't get the shot too well. That's a good joint. And now we're gonna reflow this one. And those are some good ass joints. Okay, the audio board is done. Joints be looking real nice. Oh yeah. So let's move on to the power board. Okay, last but not least, usually least, but we're doing it all, is the power board. And yeah, so we're gonna need, I've got my Hacko desoldering gun. This is what I'd recommend, but you can also get away with a solder sucker, which is, you know, 1/300th the price of my like $250 gun. And what you do, oh, that's not stock. Looks like somebody already swapped these caps, but like that's not the default length, and it looks like a whole lot of gross going on. That's a yikes. Yeah, I'm gonna snip that. Oh God. These are rough. And then with some rubbing alcohol, taking my crap brush, I'll clean this off best I can. That actually works surprisingly well. Usually that gunk is much more fickle than that. So here's what I want to do. I want to add a little bit of solder to each of the joints. The caps we're going to remove. It can bridge, doesn't really matter, because we're going to be sucking it all up. Now the thing with through-hole caps is the ground points can be real fickle if they're soldered to like a massive ground plane, but none of these seem too bad. I like to give it a little wiggle. So you can see that looks pretty good. Let's get this one. And yeah, the thing is, it's not just about wait, was that right? Okay, yeah, it's not, this one just fell right out. It's not just about removing the cap. We need to have we need to be able to solder through the hole, or get the new cap through the holes. So yeah, those are nice. We can fit some legs right through there. Yeah, someone definitely replaced this shit. Bent these in pretty good. So we don't want to just start pulling. So that's when you start breaking tabs or breaking pads here. So I'm gonna try to flush cut these off of here. Oh, that's pretty good. Now we should be able to do one more go at it. Get it out of here safely. Hopefully that's enough. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to add a bit more solder. Desolder it again. When you're dealing with stuff that's had leaking caps, it gets real rough working with. Yeah, that's what it was. As you can see, those pads are pretty gooey. That cap had leaked pretty hardcore. And that will really affect how well the solder will flow when it's heated. In a negative way. So we'll clean the fuck out of this. And then the hard part's over. Desoldering is the hard part. Negative leg goes through the one with the strip, and plus is positive. Put them in. You can like bend a leg to keep it in place and add solder. Easiest of the caps to replace, hardest to remove if you don't have the proper tools. Alright, so I've got the new caps in here, and yeah, it's pretty good. Oh, that guy can be a little shorter. Board's cleaned up. Probably do a bit more cleaning on the board in a bit, but I think now's a good time to test it out. So since I already have the sound and power board pulled out from the original shell, let's go ahead, pop it in the new yellow shell, and give it a test. Then we'll go from there. Whew! Alright, dudes. Caps have all been swapped. I've got my crap game gear here. Party in the back on the yellow shell. Got Sonic 2. And this is a power back rechargeable battery that I put brand new Amazon batteries in. A little bit of an advanced install. You have to solder wires to batteries, basically. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if you want to see a video on how I got this all set up. Kept it pretty much all OEM except new batteries that are like twice as good, 3 times as good as the originals, and not melting and leaking because they're 40 years old or whatever the fuck. Okay, so yeah, let's give it a shot. And so far it works. Where's the audio's good too? Very nice. Oh my god. Beautiful. Sounds great. Okay. God damn, I forgot how loud these things get. That's wild. Beautiful, dudes. Well, we're set. Now it's just a matter of swapping in the brand new screen. And always, if you're going to do a cap swap on one of these, or install a screen, make sure you test it after doing the caps to make sure that was successful. If you do the caps, go straight into another mod, then you know, you don't know if you have to troubleshoot. You don't know if it's a shitty cap job or you installed the screen wrong. If you do a mod, test it out before proceeding to another mod. At least in this case. So yeah, let's put the screen in, and we'll hit the old ink and paper. See what we gotta do. Okay, so I've glossed over the instructions, and it's gonna seem very familiar if you've done a McWill install. It's just quite a bit less components need to be removed, and the PCB design is much nicer. A lot less wires and a lot more just being able to solder it in directly to the board. There's nice PCB, etc. So first off, you're going to need to cut the metal shielding of your Game Gear if yours has these prongs sticking up. Now, it's kind of been like 50-50 with the Game Gears I've worked on if they have this or not. So obviously, my new one, it does not have any metal pieces sticking up that needs to be cut. And the backing doesn't as well. But if yours does look like this, you're going to need to cut away like that. Next up, we're going to need to break a piece of the front housing. So if you still have your board hooked into your shell, you're going to want to remove that. And then come in here, the flush cuts, give it a snip, pop. And there we go. We're good to go. Easy peasy. And I'm going to give it a few more little cuts here. So make sure it's nice and flush. Beautiful. On to the main Game Gear motherboard. Here she is. Okay, so we're going to start by completely disassembling this thing. So every screw we got, we're going to get them gone. Beautiful. Okay. So the membranes I'm going to pull off for now. Put them aside. Then the buttons. These can all pop out. And I'm going to need to figure out how the speaker removal works. It appears to be covered in, is that plastic? What's going on here? Oh, okay. So I believe the new kit comes with, the speaker can be screwed in. I don't really know what's going on with this old original speaker. Ay, ay, ay. Okay. I'll put this guy aside. Got the old speaker. And that is everything. Okay, now here's the part where you want to be nice and careful. I'm going to add a little bit of flux. I want to tin up my iron nice and proper. Get a good amount of solder on my tip, and then we're going to remove the original screen. Now, the new kit, same with the McWill, needs to solder up on some of these original pins here. So we don't want to rip these pads. Now, in the event that you do, all of the kits will pretty much tell you you're fucked. Obviously, these pins are going to, there's other traces and they all have test points. So if you do fuck up, it's not game over. You can just follow with your eye to the other trace here, solder up a wire to that test point, and call it good. They all seem to have test points somewhere. So if you do rip a pad, it's not GG for your GG. So here's what I do. We just go, we heat up the pins one at a time. Oh, derp. Here's what I forgot, dudes. That's why it's being a butthole. You need to remove the tape first. Whoops. Forgot about that. That's what's keeping it in. So we remove the tape. I've seen people, there's some pretty bogus info out there. Some people like will literally just like rip the screen off. I've seen people do that in like old Nomad videos, probably in Game Gear videos. Don't do that. It's a bad idea. These are soldered on. It's not. Yeah, it's just not a good idea. It's like similar with the like twisting of the caps, but probably way sketchier. Okay. As you can see, all these pins are intact. I've got a bridge there. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to add introduce some new flux. Some nice, no clean. Keep the board not sticky. And just work at these, work at the bridge first, and then we're going to tin every pin up. There we go. Bridge is gone. Nice and easy. So I'm going to add a bit of solder to my tip, and just kind of like a paintbrush, go through and introduce some new solder to the mix. Okay, so this is looking pretty nice. Now I want to grab some 99, clean it up. Seems a little sticky from the adhesive there. At this point, I'd go over it with your eyeballs. Look at the pins. Make sure nothing's bridging up. It looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna go over this guy again. It's not bridge, but it's close to it. Okay, if you made it this far, congratulations. I think one of the sketchiest parts is over for you. And now, gotta remove some components here. So first, we gotta get rid of these two backlight fuses. And again, I'm going to be using my desoldering gun. Okay, so the fuses are somewhat desoldered. Now I'm going to, this is for the backlight shielding there. Just big pads. Backlights out. See if the fuse is free. Looks like it's coming. Fuse is out. Other side. Other side, other hand. Very nice. Fuse is out. Next on the chopping block, we got this coil. Right? Yeah, coil. This guy right here. That guy stays. The C70 stays. Alright, let me double check. That is correct. Okay, so we're going to remove L2 coil. So it's these two pads right here. So we'll come in. I like to add new solder once again. Just helps things flow. Alright, now we got to do R56 and 57. Gotta go. That's it. There's one more thing after that, which is snipping one of the wires on the cable. So the trick is add a little bit of solder, both sides. Try to heat up both sides at once. And the resistor will stick to your iron, and it's as easy as that. It's nice and gone. Goodbye. Okay. Okay, next we need to snip the far left wire from the power board. So we're coming in with the flush cuts. Snip. We want to do the same, follow it around to the other side. And here it is on the other side. Just make sure it's nice and loose. And easy peasy. Okay, and now we take our easy PCB that comes with the kit here. And we line up this circle. Let me take it off real quick to show you what I'm talking about. We line up this circle pad here. There's a hell of a gap there. Let's see, does it? I didn't look at the back side. Let me check with a multimeter. See if there's pads on the back. I'm not sure if we're supposed to melt it from top to bottom, or if me heating up these bottom pads is also heating up pins behind it. So let me grab my multimeter and give it a test. So we really do need to bridge it with this big gap here. That's a pain. That's gonna be a real pain. Okay. Hey, ModzvilleUSA from the future here. And if you've made it this far, take this easy install PCB, chuck it in the trash, and just wire it up regularly. This PCB, it's a great idea. Execution, I think not so great. I think it'd be really nice to see a revision of this. All they'd have to do is make it, instead of a PCB, like a thick PCB, make it a flex cable, like the DC HDMI kit, something like that. Then we just drag right over, make it sit flush with the board so it's easy to solder to. Still lock it in the same spots first. Flex cable. That would be beautiful. If you can make that happen, if the guys at RetroSix are here, if you can share this with them, I think that would really step it up a notch. Because right now, yeah, great kit, but the easy install PCB, whew, just stay away from it. So wire it up. The best way to do that, line it up. Just line it up with the PCB so you know which pins to solder to and what they go, and then solder it directly to the board. I'm gonna put pictures up right now of my install with the wires. That's the way I would recommend doing it. So go ahead and do that, and yeah, I'll smell you later. And then I believe we got some wiring to do for sure. So you can wire up the brightness controls on the front of the board, but they do go suspiciously close to the buttons. So we're gonna wire it on this side, and thankfully they have alternate pads, one on the other side, or the BL1, BL2 on the back and the front, which is great. So we'll wire it up in the front to avoid any cables going by our buttons. Really like that. Okay, so I've put the screen within the brackets. Build quality on these brackets is quite nice. Doesn't feel like some crappy 3D printed stuff. It's got nice feel to it. And then we're going to plug this in to the ribbon connector down here. Okay, the proper way is a much easier angle. Okay, that's how it's supposed to plug in, and then again we're going to use 2 thumbs, push down from the center. Do not want to rip the ribbon cable connector or have that snap. And then we flip it back over. And now we're going to need to line everything up. Okay. I don't know how well you could see that, but I've got this all lined up here. It's slipping. You want to line this up like that, and then move the screen around until you can see the screw holes there. Got it again, lost it again. Once we get one screwed in, then it should be easy for the other 2. Okay, so the screen is now connected. Got it all screwed in. Everything seems gravy. Nice and secure. This is I like this setup much better than ModzvilleUSA with a mounted screen like this, instead of having to do the solder blobs. Much better solution. I do gotta say, no offense to the ModzvilleUSA mod either, because that came out a good at least 5 years ago, so there's plenty of time to think about improvements for a kit like this. Very similar kit. A whole lot of revisions and improvements so far, which I really appreciate. So now we just gotta wire up a couple of wires, and we're good to test it out. So let's do that. Okay, so as for the wiring, we're gonna start with the potentiometer here. Wires going from here to BL1 and BL2, the second from the top and the third from the top. So the 2 middle pins is what we're going to focus on here, and I want to tin them up. Very nice. And this is going to BL1. Go ahead and avoid these pads here. I believe that's where the shell will intersect, as well as any screw holes. Okay, feel good about that joint. So just flip it back over. This bottom one is going to go to BL2. This guy goes to BL2. Okay, now we're going to solder a wire to the right side of this capacitor, and that goes to start on the main PCB. So let's get that wired up. Okay, so that's that guy's wired up. Now we just gotta do BTN2 goes to the left leg of this capacitor. Alright, now we gotta jump this T10 pad to R23. I've already gone ahead and added some solder. Now this is slightly different on a twin ASIC one. Okay, that's pretty good. Careful of your fingers. It's kind of hard to not burn yourself here, especially if you're not using like tweezers like I did not, but that'll do. One more joint. This is the internal clock here, so we are going to solder up 32 megahertz. And that gets connected to this FBI 1. And there it is. That is all connected. Now, if you have the twin ASIC one, the only difference there would be the following. So it's simple, easier for me to just pull up the ModzvilleUSA install diagram. But if you have the twin ASIC, you're going to want to jump these right here, T10 to T12, and the clock 32 megahertz gets soldered. FB1, same name, different location. That's it. That's the only difference there. So here's the new RetroSix magic soldering screen, all set up and configured. Now all I gotta do is pop this in my new yellow shell along with my new green buttons and put it together and test her out. Don't forget to pull this off, but do that last. That is the last thing I want to do. So I want to install everything in my new shell, and let's give this a test. Okay, guys, so I had fired it up and it didn't work out. So I think it's got something to do with this shitty PCB. So I went ahead, I removed that. I'm going to electrical tape this guy. I cut the cable so I didn't have to remove the screen. I'm not going to be using it. But I just wired this up straight. And there's no diagrams really for wiring it, but you can easily just line it up by seeing what was supposed to go where with this PCB. And then I just kind of line this up like that, and then CL2, you know, with the arrows, just put a wire directly on the pin, and that will go straight to, there's test points right here, and there's others on the other side of the screen, which would have probably been easier to get to, but they're both fine. This works. This is just like a ModzvilleUSA install coming from the back, nice and clean, nice and easy. So all in all, fuck this thing. I'm not a fan, but yeah, it is what it is. And it's got pads on the back. I don't know what they were going for with this one. I guess maybe if we kept going over it, whatever. Maybe I'll try it again next time. I could have used the multimeter to test with the pads. I didn't realize there was pads on the bottom. But yeah, I have a feeling that's what the issue was. So it's fine. I'm just going to use the wire install. It's honestly easier for me anyway, because I've done enough of these. I'll just use the wire one. But yeah, I want to put it back together and test it out. Alright, boys and girls, so I got it put back together in a nice shell. And I do gotta say, this thing is a beauty. I like it as much as The OEM one, I think, is a pretty good recreation of that build. Ooh, and I got this green piece here. I'm going to use this for the extension port, whatever that port is. I've never had to use it for anything. I'm really not sure what goes in here. Lime green up top. Dude, I dig it. I dig this. As you can see when we fire it up, we got a beautiful screen. Now, essentially, this is a McWill, like a clone McWill screen. But beyond that, it is a highly optimized McWill kit, making it much easier. So same thing. Hold all the buttons and press start. Now we got some dope scan lines in the mix. Right? Okay, let's hold it. I'm gonna cycle through all the viewing. And I like it here. I like it with the scan lines. I think that looks neat. And the buttons so far working real nice. Everything feels good. Brightness works out. And I have my exposure turned down as well, so... Oh, you slut. So that's it, dudes. Simple install. Big takeaway is don't use this shitty easy soldering guide. It sucks. It actually makes the whole thing way harder because I don't know. I just don't think this is properly built to, you know, do drag soldering to. So I think the idea is the solder will flow on the underside here, but if you bridge, you'll never be able to see it. You'd have to go in with a multimeter. It's really not that hard to just put a wire down, heat it up, you're good to go. It's soldered in, so I would recommend not using this guide at all. It's actually trash, to be honest. Hopefully in the future they come out with one of these without this to cut costs, because yeah, it's got good intentions but poor execution in my humble opinion. But the kit itself, beautiful. Highly recommend this over a McWill because it's cheaper, it's easier to install, and the only reason at this point I would recommend a McWill over this is if you want to hook up a VGA port or HDMI port, have some sort of output on it to hook it up to your TV, but really I have no interest in doing that. It's a Game Gear, it's a handheld console, and I want to use it as such. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll smell you guys later.